Who's all here? Sue is here. Richard is here. Kayla is here. Jennifer is here. I feel like romper room. Carrie's here. Trevor's here. And no Michael still. We are good to go. All right. The next action item, which is one of my favorites this evening, is to elect a chair and vice chair. And I will nominate Trevor Peterson to be the chair, as he has expressed an interest.
Second.
And I guess the only other question is, would you like to continue as vice chair, or I could do that unless you really want to be vice chair? Anybody else want to be vice chair? No, I wouldn't if I were you, but
I will stay vice chair.
you will shave. All right. The nominations, well, somebody want to nominate Sue to be
I
official?
nominate Sue to be vice chair.
Thank you. I'll second. Did somebody second when I nominated Trevor? Good. All right. Then we're good to go. I'm sure Benjamin is taking track of all this. Since this is usually not a heavily debated issue, I will call for the meeting or for votes. All in favor of that slate of officers indicate by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Good, because otherwise it might end up being chair. So we have now moved them. I will turn the meeting over to you since you are now the chair. Yay. Thank you for the respite. Please have a long administration. Good name tax later. I'll be you. That's fine. Thank you. You don't have to be that official. I'll leave this with it. Oh, thank you. This is a much better perspective.
Yeah, it's different. Thank you, Chair Grow. I appreciate that.
I stole the pen.
I took it from there, so
Okay.
we switched.
We're all set.
Yeah.
I'm done with my duties. I'm gonna shut up now.
Okay, the next action item is to approve the action minutes. I have one correction that I'd like to submit, and then I'll take any others. Just the spelling of my last name should be S-E-N. So just wanted to get that on the record. Are there any other corrections to the minutes? If not, I'll take a motion to approve.
I was gonna shut up. Let her.
Ben, did you get a second there? Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes, say
Aye.
aye. Aye. Okay, minutes are approved. We'll move on to the next part of public comment. Are you here to give public comment today? Got it. Thank you. There is, and we'll be getting to that. All right, we'll move on to Parks Project update from Jennifer Ward.
I do want to thank both Andy and Sue for their leadership. With the exception of a very short time period, you have led the Parks Board for as long as I've been with the city. I appreciate your service and the service for all of you. You're delightful to work with, and you're committed to our parks, and I really appreciate that. Yeah, and thank you for stepping up, Trevor. This will be fun. If you haven't noticed, we have a new face behind the computer. This is a temporary new face for us. Megan wasn't able to be here tonight. Benjamin is stepping in. He's the executive assistant for our community development department as opposed to public works. And we appreciate him being here tonight. Thank you. Yeah, he does a lot of these evening meetings. So the fact that he fit in one more for us is commendable, and thank you.
And it was his birthday yesterday.
Yes, it was. I didn't get a chance to wish you.
Never tell me anything.
Not a day over 25? That's what I thought. All right. So great. Let's talk about what's been happening in the parks since last we got together, which was the end of December. As you know, we completed our Japanese garden restoration. the plaques that were donated by the Heart and Soul Walking Group and the Tory Gate framework, which was donated by the Dallas Garden Club, have been installed near the bridge. So it's not the best picture of it, but if you've been over there, you'll see them on either side of the bridge with the plaques that recognize donors, sponsors, contractors, just about everybody who was involved in this project, and there were quite a few. And then there's also a plaque that talks about Art Higashi and his life. We are working to get our floodplain permit so we can construct the paths on either side of Forestry Creek. This is one of our capital projects for the year. We have grant funding for it. And we just will be working in a floodplain. FEMA has changed the floodplain rules effective December 1st, actually. So that's a little bit more of a process than we initially anticipated. We are still planning on constructing them this fiscal year. So later this spring, they should be there. And then we did also purchase a full-size Tory Gate. So these are about 5 feet tall, about 4 feet wide. We have a full-size Tory Gate that's about 9 feet high and 7 feet wide. And once we build those paths, one of those will go over the path on the east side of the east entrance to the garden. So as you walk along that path on the north side of Forestry Creek and come into the garden, you'll go through that Tory Gate. So we have it. We've purchased it. It's been delivered. We have it here. We're just waiting to put it in the paths before we do that. So those are just the finishing touches on the Japanese garden. As you know, we have other projects underway. We are building John Barnard Park. I was just there about an hour ago, so even these pictures are outdated. The fence, the wooden fence in the distance was one of the first things to go in that forms a perimeter between the houses on the east and private property on the south. They have marked out where all the pathways are going to go. They've excavated the base for the basketball court. Yes, that's what's been done today. So work is underway. We had put a fall completion date. They have allotted 90 days to do this. So I don't know if they'll quite make the 90 days, but this is a summer completion as opposed to a fall completion. So that's really exciting.
Can you remind me the location of this park?
This is the corner of this is the corner of Fur Villa and Academy. Fur Villa and Academy.
Understand the park correct? Doesn't it wrap around 2 or 3 homes?
Does, right. And so that that kind of, it doesn't wrap all around. The city property does wrap all the way around, but we aren't developing the west side. That's kind of wetlands area, so that's just going to stay undeveloped. But behind those houses is where the pollinator garden will be located.
I'm just curious because I think there's another area that will maybe look like that. Has there been any communication or resistance from those homeowners about the park going in? I'm assuming they knew about it beforehand.
I would assume that as well, though both the homes and the preliminary plans for the park were before my time. I know that we have at least one homeowner who wanted to be able to access the park through their back fence, and that we discouraged. It poses a security risk to them, but also there's going to be landscaping there that we don't particularly want people walking through. Yeah. So not resistance to the park, just not being able to access it the way that he would like to. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is Classic Construction and Design. We as a city haven't used them before. They gave us a very good bid. Came in. We had this budgeted for around $1.5 million. They gave us a bid for almost on the dot, 1 million. And they've been great to work with, very nice people. They're out of Eugene. So far, so good. So this is our list of capital projects, kind of fun to look at. Many of them have been completed over the course of the year. I reported to you on John Barnard Park. You can see a couple are crossed off. I'll talk about those in just a minute. I talked about the paths on either side of Forestry Creek down at the bottom. The other one I haven't talked about is Lone Oak Park. That is a pocket park going on accessed through Perkins Court, which comes off of Denton. There will also be access from, was that Hillside? Hillcrest. Okay. So we have a contractor for that. They have been, their contract says they'll have it completed by the end of May. So it's in the early stages, but it's moving along. I don't have any concerns that it won't be finished by the end of the fiscal. It's really just going to be a green space. Yeah. Yes. Yep. So there will be concrete path accessible from both Hillcrest and from the Perkins. Yeah. And you'll be able to, that walk will kind of be a little bit circular around that space there because you kind of walk up to it, right? Up there. Lawn, the single lone oak, and maybe a little bit of landscaping along some of the fences. Yes. Yes. So the two that got crossed off, let me talk about those. I'll do Fir Villa first. So as I reported in the fall, we built the eastern section of the Fir Villa Trail. We did not build the western section because we need to build some sort of trailhead. We need to be able to access for that trail to be able to come up to grade and be able to access it from Fir Villa, right? And that proved to be a little more involved than we had initially thought. There's a fair amount of grade there that needs to be contended with, and a pretty narrow easement that we need to work in. So it wasn't something that we could pull off. We hired Lock engineers to come and do the design work for that, which they have done. But that ate up some of the money that we had for it. And then just the cost to construct it is more than what we had budgeted for this year. And so it's shelf ready. We have the design. When we're ready to build it, we should be able to do so. I've pushed that out on the capital project planning list till 26-27. So it's not one that we'll tackle next year. It's one that we'll tackle the year following. That one, I think that's a good question. For some reason, I want to say no, but I can't remember why.
The existing path was flooded this last bunch of water, wasn't it? But it wasn't that area, right?
Oh, Barberry Trail floods regularly. Yeah, regularly. But I haven't had reports of Fir Villa flooding. Yeah. Okay, pickleball courts. So let me talk about them for a little bit. This was another project that once we dug into it, ended up being more involved than we had initially thought. So, I think we initially envisioned it as a DIY kind of project, but as we considered it more, especially with the parking that City Council asked for, and then looking at, additional improvements to sidewalks and the crossing there with Levens, this seemed like something that we needed to involve engineers with. So Locke also did the engineering for us on that. There were also rumors about the old city pool that was on that site. And so we needed to put those rumors to rest once and for all. That meant some geotechnical investigation and reporting. And sure enough, there's a pool there that we could build on top of, but we are being advised against it. So, so we got to get the pool out of there. So that adds cost. And then see the previous statements about the floodplain rules changing. So then there was a lot of mitigation work that we would need to do to lay that amount of impervious surface down would have been a lot. And again, we're working with Locke to get into compliance. So we had initially planned on, I think, around $700,000 for that project. With everything that I just said, the price has gone up by $1 million. So again, that's more than we budgeted for this year. Indeed, that is. But there's parking spaces too. Yeah. And they're going to be, I mean, there will be improvements to the sidewalk. There will be improvements to the parking area that's already there across the street. It is going to be a much nicer entrance to City Park when we're done. That said, so back when we thought it was going to be 750,000, when we didn't get the grant, we said, oh, we'll just go ahead and pay for that out of SDCs, right? At 1.7, we can't really. We can't pay for pickleball courts completely out of SDCs and still fund the other parks projects that we have both underway and allocated. So, so I went before City Council on Monday whenever we go for a grant, especially one that's this large. And the grant that we're going for is a Oregon Parks and Recreation grant, and that reimburses 60% of the construction costs. So it'll come in just a little under $1 million. And so whenever we do that, both the funders require a resolution from City Council, and our own practices require a resolution from City Council. So I went before City Council on Monday to ask them to approve that resolution. There is discussion around it, and I want to just address that a little bit because you are representatives of the city concerned with parks. So I want to make sure that you're in the know. There was some concern by some of the councilors, both about the allocations of funds that pickleball courts were being prioritized over other parks projects or over other city projects. A desire to see parks projects that appealed to a larger span of demographic, more ages. Also, a counselor, was not excited about the site where it is. These were all things that the city manager and I addressed. This plan this location, this design of 10 pickleball courts with the parking spaces is the design that City Council approved a year ago with substantial input. And it had gone through Parks Board about 3 times. When I looked over the timeline, like you guys had seen it about 3 times. Urban development? Yeah. Buildings and Urban Development saw it 1 or 2 times. City Council had seen it like twice. So there's been plenty of review of this project. And I think that the councilors who had questions were responding to some social media chatter that was taking place. And, they're just being responsive to their constituents. And I felt like we had a productive conversation, and it was unanimously approved that I need to have that application in by April 1st, and we'll see where that goes. So assuming that we get the grant, we have pickleball courts pushed out to next year. So I would hope that.
My memory of having it brought before, I remember multiple sites being suggested for the pickleball courts. And one of the reasons that site was selected was because it was going to be less expensive than siting it at Jordan Park or other places. So it's intriguing now that like the the price has gone up because of the site. And so I mean, it does pose, I mean, I haven't heard any of the social media buzz, but it does, you know, knowing that $1 million added to the, that seems a lot for a city of Dallas for pickleball courts, an extra $1 million to excavate a pool when there's other locations. I know it's been invested in this plan but I know that there were other locations that were considered early on, and I'm just wondering, you know, why not go back and consider some of those again, as opposed to invest $1 million into a site that was supposed to be only $700,000.
I will say that one of the reasons that, or feedback that we got through our last grant process was they felt like we had, even for the plan that we had then, they felt like we had underestimated the expenses. So I don't think that the cost differential is realistically is quite as great. We estimated it to be 750,000. It was probably, to have built it without those extenuating circumstances, was probably closer to $1 million anyway. It's still a big differential. I don't think it's as big. We had a discussion internally about the pool. I mean, you know, and our feeling is that, you know, this was a problem that was left for us by past city employees or contractors or whoever made that decision, right? And that one way or the other, we need to take care of that pool correctly and once and for all, so that we're not just kicking the can down the road. So there's that. I think the other appeal, at least what I remember City Council saying, the reason they were so hot on this site at the time was because our expectation is that these pickleball courts will be used for tournaments and will generate you know, people coming into our town and using them. And they really liked the idea of having them situated at an entry to our downtown and to be visible as, you know, an entry into our main part and into our downtown, and the economic benefits that would come by having it there.
Could you move it more to the west?
Right. So we did look at that. It becomes a little more costly. Okay, so we could move it to the west and get it out off the pool and just leave the pool where it is. What that does is two things. There's some elevational change. It's not that much, but it's enough. And so then construction costs actually go up. It also puts it even more in the floodplain. And so those mitigation efforts go up as well. And so we did have them like draft two designs for us with cost estimates associated for both. And they were about even. The moving it came out a little bit more. Mm-hmm.
It's also less visible.
Being a little further back. Right. It made the parking a little wonky. Mm-hmm.
And we need to take care of that. It's like you said, I agree, let's not kick that can down. Get it done.
So that's where we stand on the pickleball courts. Those are, like I said, the grant agreement or the grant application is due April 1st. We usually hear on those grants by the end of the summer. Grant agreements are usually in place by the fall. And so we would go out to bid early winter, break ground on them as soon as the weather allowed us in the spring. So this would be a summer 2026 project. Any questions about any of the parks projects that we are tackling or will tackle? Okay.
There's no thought that the grant process will be changing or affected by the current political environment we're in at the state level?
I think that is a concern that everybody has. My understanding we do have we do have grants that are federal dollar grants that pass through the state. This is not one of them. These are state dollars. These are lottery dollars. So I feel more secure about these grants than maybe some of my others. But just to, everybody is asking those questions, how will the actions and decisions that are taking place at the federal level, what will that trickle down effect look like? But right now, like I said, I feel most secure about these state grants.
Questions about parks update?
The grants due in 10 days. I assume you're all over it.
All over it, Andy. Thank you. No, I don't. No, I think we're good. Yeah, thanks.
Staff report about the ADA playground equipment.
So I really, exploring options for ADA playground equipment in our community has been a really worthwhile exercise. And I want to thank you for asking us to do so and the board's encouragement to do so. It has highlighted a need that was, to be honest, a little peripheral in my vision and has come into clearer focus. Owen and I have talked about it a lot, and we can't see a way to, in the immediate future, put in an accessible play structure with the accompanying surface. We're talking at least $50,000, and that could qualify for SDCs. But as we said, those SDCs are limited and have already been allocated to other projects. So, where we stand is, one, recognizing that ADA accessible playground equipment has to be a priority when we're looking at replacing equipment or getting new equipment and building new parks. And I would say that is a shift in our approach to our parks planning. We have incorporated that the replacement of playground equipment into our capital planning. Capital planning we plan 5 years in advance. So we're folding that into that planning. To be honest, it's a little bit at the end of those 5 years because those SDCs are already spoken for with projects that have further up in the planning cycle, right? But it's there, and now that it's there, it will force us to account for that. In the short term, I really am optimistic and excited about the opportunities that John Barnard Park will hold. There's accessible play equipment there with the play surface, and the fact that this park is ahead of schedule in its construction means that I expect this summer, your grandchild and other children in our community will have a place to play. And then we are just committed to building on that over the years.
CDC funding, is that per fiscal year? So, for example, it was mentioned that, the construction of Fairvilla was going to be used for that, I believe. And because we're holding off that project, does that money roll over to the next year, or where does that money go since we're not using it this year?
So SDC funds are generated with development. So the money comes into it over the course of the year, depending on how many developments and what type. So it's not a lump sum or whatever, it comes in. And then our expenditures we plan for on that 5-month that 5-month planning schedule, like I said. 5 years, sorry, 5 years, thank you. So we are doing our best to estimate the SDC funds that'll be coming in over those 5 years with their allocations, right? So you are correct. We had allocated some SDCs for Fur Villa, but I need to advocate or allocate more because it's going to cost more. And that's why I moved it 2 years out, because I already had parks projects planned for next year that are going to use SDCs. Does that make sense? Okay.
So when you're talking about the end of the 5 years of trying to put this into that budget, you're talking 5 years from today. So it's not a rolling 5, correct?
It's a rolling 5
It
years.
is. Okay.
It's a rolling 5 years.
Okay.
So, yeah, so we do annual budget. We may change to biennial, but right now we're on an annual budget. So we do our budgeting for, our staffing, basically our materials and supplies, but then also our capital projects. And so we say, this is what we're going to accomplish in this fiscal year, but we also have an idea of what we're going to accomplish the next fiscal year and the next for 5 years out. And then when we complete that, we add a year at the end of that 5 years. Yes.
Question, as far as I know City of Dallas can't, but what if the community fundraises for that money? How could you accept that money to be able to create that pad if we did fundraisers to develop that money? Okay,
There is a parks, called a Parks Trust Fund.
okay.
That. So that would be a place to put it.
As board members, can we participate in those those fundraisers? Okay,
Fund currently?
There is, I don't know the current balance. Have to look. I don't think it's tons.
Sure.
in these meetings that the minutes that you send out, will you put the contact information so we as board members can get in contact and try to do some fundraising?
Contact what contact? This? Or
I had a question. If I remember hearing correctly, John Bernard is coming under budget, correct? I know that money can be very restricted in where it can go. Is there any chance that the leftover from that park could be transferred into ADA play equipment or funds that could go towards it?
So the way that we would handle that is we would then reallocate. We'd say, okay, that's 500,000 that we have now for these other projects that are ahead in the plan.
Gotcha. It goes first down the line. Okay. Okay.
And you can't allocate it until you get done with the project and there aren't any
Is right. Right,
Change
exactly.
orders.
Exactly.
Well, I noticed, yeah, you obviously have discretion on where you push projects out, where you pull projects back. I mean, is there any way a project like this could jump the line since it's only a $50,000 project compared to some of these $1.7 million projects?
Dollar projects. Yeah, we would have to, I mean, yes, we could look at that. The CIP for this upcoming fiscal year is, I mean, we haven't gone through the budget project yet, but internally it's pretty set. It would be difficult for me to move projects around at this point. But yes, certainly. And we could, and we do that at each, next year when we're like looking at projects, we could say, okay, do we still want to prioritize X over this? Can we shift things around? Yeah, we can have.
Even thinking about it as opposed to the end of a 5-year cycle, like within a 2-year cycle or 3, sounds more happier. It's happier.
It does. It does. Yes, it does. Absolutely. Yeah.
I would, I don't know what the policy or procedure would be, but as a board, I would like to recommend that I would like to move that we recommend that this be moved forward in the line of priority as for parks. Is there a second? Yeah, I want to prioritize it. Yeah, move it up the line. And I recommend that we do that. And I don't know the timeline. I don't know what would be most efficient. So I can't make them, I don't know, I could take back my movement, but something that's not, but I would recommend that it takes higher priority.
Or that maybe we make it, we express that our concern, our interest is in that being prioritized. Does that kind of make sense? Because if if you want to move it ahead, you've got to say what you want to move it ahead of, I think, for direction to, Jennifer, are you the one who sets those priorities, or how are those set?
In consultation, with, both with, Owen and also with, my bosses. Sure. Yeah. What I think would be sufficient is to capture in the minutes that the board has expressed an interest in these projects being prioritized when capital planning is done.
That sounds good to you? Do you?
It does sound good, but yeah, if there's any way to capture like in the next session of budget planning. I know that it's not a possibility for this year, but when we're looking at, when you look at that next conversation of budget planning, of prioritizing this. That would be something that would align with what I'm hoping for.
Would you want to limit it to just one, or just emphasize that we'd like it prioritized then and in the future?
I would like to hope that would be the year that it would be prioritized. Okay. And that would be the year that movement would happen on it. Okay. And if not, then I would make another motion to prioritize it for the following year. But
and I guess, and I don't know that, Ben can take the minutes that he wants to, but I would be curious about what that looks like to you, because we will already have accessible play equipment in the city. We will have that by this summer. So do you want to see what would compliance with your recommendation look like?
Yeah, I think at City Park, since that is kind of our flagship park in the city.
Accessible play equipment at City Park.
I would, yes.
That seems reasonable. I'd second that.
So I have a technical question. We have a motion. Is this a motionable thing? Or is it just a recommendation from the board?
Required, if the board would feel better making a motion, that's fine too.
Well, we're an advisory board, so if we advise that this is what we like, then a motion seems appropriate. Since we're not making any laws or legislation, we just want to get a voted on feeling of the board.
So we technically have a motion. I'd like to clarify the motion just to make sure we
It's
got
come
it.
out in like 4 different wordings, so.
I can read you what I have.
Please, yeah.
Ms. Coart made a motion to express the interest of the Parks Board to see this project be prioritized when capital planning for fiscal year 2026 is complete. So you're making a motion to express the agreed upon interest. So you're not making a motion for city staff to necessarily take an action, but you are putting your interest on the record. If there's a unanimous vote. Correct. At the city park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That Does that
That
sufficiently
sounds like
capture?
you really did some good wordsmithing with my
job.
emotion there. Thank you.
And then we had a second, or is that correct? Okay. Is there any discussion we'd like to have? I think one piece of discussion I like to have is I agree with the preference. I think it will definitely need to come down to what projects could potentially be pushed, and we would want to evaluate that. So, but I agree with the preference.
I think the idea was it's a small enough amount of money and
Hmm.
amidst all these other huge things, that if it looks like there's a spot that it could slide into, that we'd like to see it slid in.
Sure.
Is that kind of where we're at? Because that was what you were saying, we saved $500,000. Why can't we spend $70,000 on, putting a piece of ADA equipment in? So that just seems reasonable to me in a budget with those kind of numbers.
Discussion? Okay. For the motion, all those in favor say aye.
I
Any opposed? Okay.
Most welcome, and thank you again for in getting us moving on that.
Yes.
And enjoy Barnard Park's ADA thing. There you go.
I also wanted to say thank you to you as well for putting it inside your vision and scope. I'm also grateful that they came and brought it to our attention. So thank you for that.
It is really exciting that Barnard Park is going to have that ADHD.
Excited about that too.
That is great.
All right, we'll move on to tree board business.
So let's see here. You all finished and your lovely tree management plan last year, right on schedule. Good job, board. That needs to be with a recommendation that it be approved by City Council. That will happen on April 7th. I think I'm presenting it to them at a work session, and I think they'll vote on it in the City Council meeting that follows. Work sessions are open. But yeah, so you guys are welcome to come to either or both. Yeah, either or both. We had a little bit of discussion about this in December. So I'm bringing it back for discussion with the board to act on or not, as you decide. There are points within that tree management plan that encourage a certain amount of public engagement in different ways. So those are captured in two of the areas. One is under protect. So promote stewardship of native plant communities on private and public property. Also promote retention of trees on single-family residential lots through property owner education. And then under our goals to enhance, promote tree health and stewardship among private tree owners and the general public by promoting proper tree care to increase tree health and longevity, reduce hazard potential, and minimize storm damage. Provide education about the benefits of native plants and the negative effect of invasive species, and to host public educational and outreach opportunities. And certainly these are things that I try to do already and will continue to try to do. Oh, I should have brought you information about Arbor Day. I'll tell you about that at the end. But it seemed like in our discussion that maybe there was an opportunity for the board to be involved in some of these activities, to take the initiative to help get the word out about trees and native plants in our community. Or not.
Are you suggesting?
I'm just bringing it back. It was a point that was raised at our last meeting. I'm bringing it back for discussion. If there's no discussion to be had, then that's fine too.
So are we wanting to discuss how we're going to have outreach opportunities? Is that what we're looking for? Sorry,
Or if you even want to, does the board want to be involved in outreach to the community? And if so, what might that look like? If not really, that's not in your bandwidth or part of a board responsibility, then no.
Are you saying that you have some ideas for those kinds of things that you would want our help on? Or are you looking for us to generate ideas and work on things?
So some of this I do. Mostly through Arbor Day, or when there's, the opportunity to interact with private owners one-on-one, or Owen does it. Owen does that a lot in kind of an informal way. I would say, my bandwidth is fairly narrow. So it would, if there were, events or publications or social media posts or something like that, that the board thought would be effective, wanted to get on board with, wanted to do as a board, then I would love to have that discussion with you.
It seems to me like once this is approved by city council, that these are, I wouldn't want to start working on things like this and have then the council carve all these kinds of things out. Once it's approved by council and these are part of our direction in the city, it would seem like it would be simple enough to at least start by adding things on the website about, there's probably all kinds of already information on, stewardship for native plants, how to take care of trees, the benefits of trimming and things to minimize storm damage, all those kinds of things. It seems like at that point, then we could at least start by putting those things on the website so that, because that's the best way to disseminate information and the simplest. And then make sure that when we have public events to to at least talk about things like that, or have, posters or whatever that say, hey, here's what our tree management plan is, and these are the things you can do if you're interested, or ask me about it, things like that. But I would want us, before we did anything, I'd want to make sure that the council had approved it in a form that makes this the direction that we're supposed to go.
I think that there should be some kind of education for the community on the emerald ash board too, because there are a lot of ash trees in Dallas. And the beetle has been found now in
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yep.
but close. So it's not a matter of if, I think it's a matter of when,
And
especially if the tree happens to be a storm damaged tree that nobody's taken care of. I think that needs to be part of our education. And we can do it on website. Advantage of a website presentation would be pictures, what the beetle looks like, what kind of damage to look for in your trees, this kind of thing.
The other thing is when we get our tree inventory, know where ash trees are, correct? We can then more accurately monitor them or look for them or know what the scope of the problem could be. And it seems to me that when we wrote the tree management plan, we specifically addressed things like the emerald ash borer and risks to trees. So I think that's very much something that we can work on.
it almost also seems like we might need to do preemptive planting in areas where there's a lot of ash, so that when those trees are damaged or have to be taken down, there's already trees that are maturing, that we're not just flattening out a space with taking away all the tree cover. So yeah, I feel like, if we all recognize that that is like the biggest risk to our urban forests, that's maybe the area that as a tree board, we need to put most of our attention in terms of education and in terms of proactive tree management.
but if there are, they need to be taken off.
Do we know when the tree inventory, I knew you were gonna have a big effort, I believe, this summer with a couple of interns. Do we know when the tree inventory is expected to be completed? No.
Because I was going to start on it this last summer for the Arboretum, and it just, for me, it's been overwhelming. I mean, I know what the trees are down there. I need to list them, count them, you know, and do that. And I need to relearn the system.
You were talking about in the Arboretum, the tree inventory in the Arboretum?
City and stuff.
It seems like prioritizing too, like the Arboretum, the city park, and then the walk. Those spaces will be, you know, our you know, beloved public spaces. If those trees go from there, they'll be really noticeable. So being proactive in how we care for those spaces now seems like I mean, as opposed to all the parks, you know, maybe prioritizing some areas for early intervention.
I know we're getting a little off subject, but when we have those interns, could we set up a time to dedicate one to Sue? So all the knowledge that she has maybe gets facilitated toward, you know, getting in there?
Hopefully, our entrance will create education.
Yeah, but like you just said, you know where they all are. If you had somebody with you, rather than them having to look like, oh, there's one, you can go there, and this is that. And so in an hour, you could do somebody else's 5 hours of work. And I would like to see that prioritized or take advantage of all that knowledge that you have.
It is true that she's very knowledgeable, especially about our native trees in the Arboretum. The way that the digital inventory works, I don't know that having two people added, even a knowledgeable one, such as Sue, would make that big of a difference. Of course, if they were both, you know, if Sue was inventorying
If
somewhere.
somebody's doing the input, which is probably going to be harder for Sue than somebody who's young, nothing personal.
One person does it all. They identify the tree, where it's located, it's input into the, yeah. So.
If you don't think that's, you know, if you don't think that'll help, then I'm just trying to be.
That unfortunately, the way that the funding is structured for the intern, it's just one that we're getting this summer, is that this person can only work south of Rickreall Creek. The funding for that, so it's funding for community forestry in underserved areas. And the metrics that this particular grant uses, only areas south of Rickreall Creek in Dallas qualify as underserved. So we are going to prioritize the creek, that riparian area. We need to do our street trees, like that's part of our tree inventory too. South side of City Park. Those are probably like the three areas I'll try. I don't know that we'll knock them out, to be honest. Like, I know what you mean about overwhelming. Like, I look at the riparian. You know, I'll say, oh, okay. Do trees for an hour. I should be able to, you know, do this whole section. I've been out there for an hour and I've maybe done, you know, an area the size of this room. Because if you start trying to get the understory trees as well, yeah, it takes a while and it's tedious. But back to this, I think you're right. I think let's get it approved first. And that gives you guys some time to think. And if you want to come back and say, okay, we've got a tree plan, let's start putting stuff on the website, or let's organize a tree planting to underplant these ash areas, then we can do that.
I have a suggestion as well. Do we know if the farmer's market is coming back? So could that be also a possibility of doing education and outreach there at that main tent? I would volunteer to sit out there and do some education as well. So I think that's kind of more what you're asking, if we want to be involved into that, and I'm available to do a few hours and
I need a little bit more education to educate others, but no, that's a great idea. And that
Ah.
have someone in the city booth.
Yeah.
So we don't need to have our own tent or pay for that.
Right.
Good idea.
And can we put on the agenda to deal with this after city council approves this?
yes.
Cool.
I think a good source for education is Polk Soil and Water Conservation District has some really good information that can kind of get you guys up to date with it. And I know they would even be open to coming down and hanging out and doing some education on their end too.
Great idea.
Yeah.
I was even
So
thinking,
just doing partnerships and stuff.
definitely. And I think that's a quicker and easier way for us to get in and start doing this right away before we come up with some of our own ideas. I like the Polk Soil. I was also thinking we could partner with the Arboretum whenever they have classes. We can even just to offer human bodies to help organize. But I think those are easy and quick ways that we can get involved. So I like that.
I knew once you got talking, you'd come up with some great ideas.
Polk Soil doesn't always only just do like events, but they work with agricultural homeowners and all of that all the time. So I think it'd be a good, hey, so.
Another idea that I want to throw out for the future, something with the library, whether we could get maybe like a little corner in the library for a short time to have some posters, have a few forest related books. I think there's an audience there that we could tap into that we might not otherwise. Any other, oh, go ahead. I was gonna say, any other thoughts, ideas? Okay.
Think we got a good start?
Yeah. And be thinking about it. And if you think of anything before the next meeting, email the group, that'd be great.
So if I could, it's not on the agenda, and I should have brought you flyers. I didn't, so I will email them to you, but I want to tell you about Arbor Day, about our celebration this year. So it is April 26th. It's a Saturday. And we have a full day of events that address actually some of the very things you all came up with. So from 8 o'clock until 10 a.m., and I will send you out the flyer that will have all this, but from 8 to 10 a.m., we'll have a work group down along the creek, along the Rick Rial Creek Trail behind the Aquatic Center, and that'll be invasive species removal, mostly along there. From 10 to 12, we are partnering with Soil and Water Conservation District to bring OSU Extension to do a workshop on emerald ash borer. That will be at the Aquatic Center. So the first hour will be a classroom setting at we call them the party rooms there. And then there's an outdoor component. At 1:30, I believe, either 1 or 1:30, at the Arboretum, we shift then to the Arboretum. There will be a read in the tree for children, and one of our librarians has agreed to perch in a tree to do a story time with tree and environmental related children's books, and do a story time, and the kids can camp out on the ground on blankets underneath, and she'll be reading from a tree. And for the rest of that afternoon, and maybe earlier if we can get them out, we will have hammocks strung throughout the Arboretum so that you can have your own read in a tree, or nap in a tree, or appreciate the trees. The hammocks will be hanging onto, and those will be making appearances at city parks throughout the summer. So that'll be really fun. And then we are also promoting, this isn't our activity, but we are promoting an activity that Oregon Parks Forever is doing. It's a virtual 5K. It's in memory of Bob Ross. So it's the Happy Little Tree virtual 5K. So you can sign up for it. You get all the swag like you would for a 5K. And then anytime during Earth Week, so Earth Day is the 22nd, Arbor Day, I think, is the 25th, our celebration is the 26th. Anytime that day, that week, you do your own 5K wherever you want, right? And log it in and enjoy the happy little trees. Doesn't that sound fun? Yeah. I think if you want all the swag, I think you have to be registered this month. Like before April 1st, but I will send it to you. Yes. I will send it to you all. I'll send it to all y'all.
When did you say it starts at the Aquatic Center at 10?
Work party is at 8. Emerald Ash Borer.
Okay,
And 8 at the Aquatic Center.
got it.
Probably on the trail behind the Aquatic Center, Roger Jordan Park. Just you'll find us. Doesn't that sound like fun? I think it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be a great
That's
day. I'm
awesome.
excited about it.
Are we going to plant any trees?
We'll be planting trees. See, this is a tough one for us because, you know, April is Arbor Day, but that is not planting season for the Pacific Northwest, for the West. So we will plant in the fall. But we will try to release our trees from blackberry and vinca and ivy. Yeah, my pleasure.
Any member comments or questions about any other topics? Okay. Before we close, I would just like to publicly thank Chair Grow and all the years of your service. Thank you. And also Vice Chair. Looking forward to working with you as well.
Serving with all of you, and I believe we've left it in capable hands.
All right, well, we will have our next meeting on June 18th here, so we'll see you then. Meeting's adjourned.